theatre, film, TV and more. Suzy Wrong reviews it all on Joy Drive.
Good afternoon, Suzy Wrong.
Warren, do you remember the first time you fell in love?
Oh, yes. I do. And it ended in disaster.
How old were you?
I think I was probably mid-high school.
Okay. Well, like 15, 16.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it was a crush. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't love. Maybe I didn't know what love was.
But did that person respond?
No.
Oh, right. So it was a crush. It was a one-way
thing. Yeah, it was a one-way thing. It was, they had the freeway sign, wrong way, go back.
So when was it that you had, a both ways traffic love?
So probably, I would say when I was about 18, because I remember I was driving at the time, and I would go and pick him up from work and everything. I just, I don't know. I had no idea. You know what it's like when you've got your first relationship? You've got no idea what to do. And you just model on what your parents do. When was yours, Suzy?
Oh, I was 19. Do you remember the feeling?
I remember the feeling of finding me in bed with another man. Really well. Dragon, the group Dragon, they had this song out, Here Am I, and it was all about, all alone and, with a broken heart. And I remember driving my car with a tape in it and playing the song over and over again, bawling my eyes out. I remember it really clearly.
How long did it last?
The crying or the relationship?
The relationship?
It probably was, I don't know, only a few months. It wasn't that long. Chris, if you're listening, hope you're well. But yeah, I had no idea. We learn, don't we, Suzy? What was your first relationship like? Did you have training wheels?
My first relationship was very intense, very passionate, and went for 8 years.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. I used to be very monogamous. very serious about love.
Good. And now you're the opposite, which is great.
I'm the opposite. I feel like it happened for me, and that's a good thing. You know what? I really do remember the passion of it, and I feel like I don't know, even if I were to meet the right person now, that I'm able to kind of have that sort of passion in my life, the intensity of emotion, and kind of taking every little thing really, really seriously. Obviously, those things are unhealthy in a relationship. Kind of, everything means something, and everything's like really, really important. I remember that was how it was between two young people, and obviously, I would say that that's not a good way to conduct a relationship, but that was a sensation that I had, that I'm grateful to have, that I see in this week's program, Invisible Boys.
It's funny because I'm dating someone at the moment, and there's that passion there, and I said, well, enjoy it while it lasts. He looked at me. I'm a realist, Suzy. I said, just enjoy it.
How long has it been for the current one?
Since, is it October, I think?
Oh, that's great.
I'm terrible with dates.
You still got the passion?
Are you good with dates?
I think I am. I do kind of like the whole, like, counting the months and kind of keeping track of anniversaries and things like that.
But do you get upset if someone forgets? Because
I do.
Oh my goodness, we'd be terrible together.
And therefore, what I do is I'm always reminding them so I don't get disappointed.
Thank God.
I'm the person that organizes all my own birthday things, because I can't handle it when my friends forget. So a month from my birthday, all my friends are going to get invited, and there'll be a countdown every week. I'm going like, don't forget.
I'm sure we'll hear about it here on Drive, Suzy. Now, we watched Invisible Boys on Stan. Tell us what you thought of it, Suzy.
It all takes place in the country town of Geraldton, WA, 424 kilometres north of Perth. Charlie, Zeke, Hammer and Matt are 4 teenage boys at the cusp of adulthood, all with the same secret to keep. The new drama series Invisible Boys, streaming on Stan, is based on the novel of the same name by Holden Shepherd. It deals with the difficulty faced by gay men coming out in rural Australia, where there is often very little acceptance of diversity and where concepts of sexuality sexuality and gender are still narrow and traditional. Our four main characters come from different backgrounds, but the same inability to live authentically is proving all-consuming and very damaging. Frustration and shame cause them to act out in self-destructive ways. But when they find each other, it starts to seem like there is a glimmer of hope. I'm highly impressed by Invisible Boys. It is emotionally very deep, and while the story does start somewhere conventional, it develops extremely powerfully. I found myself getting through all 10 episodes quickly, never once considering taking a break from these riveting characters. The cast is excellent. Especially noteworthy is Pia Miranda, who plays completely against type, terribly convincing as a real monster of a mother. The writing is intelligent and sophisticated, and direction by Nicholas Versa was just exceptional. Invisible Boys may be a sentimental watch, but it is also mischievous, dangerous, and sexy. It serves as a reminder that not all queer people live metropolitan lives, and some of us are still doing it very tough in many parts of Australia. There is a lot that's heavy in Invisible Boys, but it is also seriously entertaining, and we all know the pleasure of a TV series that just keeps you wanting more. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Warren, how did you find it?
I found it fantastic. Jason, who does Hot Bread on a Sunday, just ran into him in the foyer. I just grabbed him and brought him into the studio, Suzy, because I said, Jason, what did you think of it? You came up and you said, what did you tell me?
I said a lot of things that I can't say on air. However, there is a lot of great bisexuality overtones in it, which I absolutely love, which we may talk about on Big Bi Questions, which is what we're doing tonight.
And you said there was a mirror involved as well.
There was a mirror involved, but I'm not allowed to talk about that. There was also a jersey involved.
Thank you, Jason.
Are you going to get me into trouble here?
Yeah, I am, definitely.
Fantastic. I was actually just talking to a friend of mine, and he said we should do an interview with Aidan California. What's his name? Aidan.
Suzy, do you know?
Suzy, do you know his real name?
I don't have it up, sorry.
It starts with C, but we should do an interview with him because that's not just a really good scene, but it talks about his, the pain that he has within his mind with family and the church and his mother, the way his mother, expresses her opinion of it.
Very authentic. Loved it.
She was good.
Thank you, Jason.
Typically Italian.
We'll catch you Hot Bread?
No. By Questions. Hot Bread's not on at the moment.
That's right. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, bye.
Suzy, I loved it. You know what was really interesting is I had an ex, you asked about relationships before, from Geraldton. And I'd never been there before, but it was quite interesting to see the town because he grew up gay in that town as well. And it kind of explained a lot of his behaviour. He was very... like all of us, I suppose there's trauma, isn't there? And there's a lot of trauma involved in Invisible Boys. But I found it fascinating to see what Geraldton was like as a town and what it'd be like growing up gay there.
That's interesting that you brought up this thing about the baggage that we carry. I remember my second long-term boyfriend after the first one that we mentioned earlier. Early on in the relationship, he looked at me one day and he said, "What did he do to you?" And I had no idea that I was carrying the remnants of that of some of the negative experiences there. And we do carry it on over. And because these boys they live in such challenging conditions. I think most of us do, but maybe clearly in a country town, it's hard. It's much harder, and it's lucky that they are able to find each other, and that's a good thing. And how they're able to find kind of way to console each other, whether as boyfriends or just friends. And there's a lot of light, I think, at the end, even though it does take us through a very dark path. I was happy that at the end it wasn't all too dark and gloomy.
Suzy, just on that, some have raised concerns about the series focusing heavily on the trauma and expressing a desire for more uplifting queer stories alongside the struggles. And I know we've spoken about that before, but I just feel like sometimes we just need to tell our story, even if it does involve trauma, don't you think? I feel like we can't just gloss over. A lot of us have had really shitty upbringings and horrible experiences, and I think it's kind of we need to talk about those stories. We need to hear those stories, and only then can we heal and start expressing the more uplifting things as well. What do you
Look,
reckon?
when I see the darkness in Invisible Boys, I was thinking, why do we need more stories like that? And I see them, how young they are and how contemporary they are. And I feel like, there are still people living through this, and because the way the media landscape has changed, maybe this would be the first thing that someone who needs it gets to see it, like we have seen stories like that done, quite a few times before through the decades. But I'm sure there are teenagers somewhere in country Australia, they are coming across this story for the first time, and it is going to be so extremely valuable and inspiring to them. And that's special. I thought about if I was at that sort of age of 17, if I had this amount of content, role models and people setting examples for me, I would have been much happier in my teens and my 20s.
It's interesting, though, because I feel like, I grew up in the city, and I always felt like it was a bit of a safety zone, even though I wasn't out as a kid. You had your friends and you could escape, and I don't know what it would have been like growing up in a small rural country town. It's lovely now we can talk about going out and having a tree change, but growing up, I don't know what it would have been like. I was thankful that I was surrounded by lots of people. It was just a safety net for me.
I kind of have both. I lived in a city, but it was in Singapore. So it didn't sort of have that kind of parochialism that you see in these stories about country Australia. But obviously it had a lot of very bad homophobia, transphobia in the 80s and 90s. So some of this is very familiar to me. And on one hand, I'm sad that it still carries on. I think as kind of older queer people, we almost have this like wishful thinking that it's over. But the truth is, young people all have to come out. Young people all have to come out in straight families, by and large. And, you can have understanding, accepting families, but it is always going to be difficult, I believe. And obviously Invisible Boys shows 4 examples where it's sort of more difficult than most, I would imagine. But it's done very honestly, and because of the way it's done so truthfully, I think it's so captivating. I just couldn't get my eyes off of it.
And some people have noted that, I suppose, the representation of masculinity in the show tends to lean towards those, traditional ideals. I read some comments saying that we should have more diversity in types of masculinity on the screen, but I feel like that was representing this town authentically, and that's just the way it was there.
That is so interesting that people would pick up on that. I too picked up on that. In the start, I thought that, they do have sort of quite a good racial diversity with the 4 boys, but why are they all kind of like, old school masculine? And then you think about country Australia, it's like you just have to behave that way to survive, don't you? And I guess the whole story, the whole premise of this story is what the things they have to do to survive, and how it is very difficult if you happen to be queer.
And I suppose, you're limited with the number of people that you can interact with and your friends. It's not like in the city where you can potentially meet a new group of friends easily because it was such a small town. I loved it. I thought it was great. I would encourage everyone to go and see it. It is really good. It's on Stan if you can get it. It's called Invisible Boys. Suzy Wrong, I know you've got to run, so what are we going to watch next week?
The 32nd Mardi Gras Film Festival is on right now. Next week, we'll be reviewing a Canadian film called Lakeview, which you can see at the cinema if you're in Sydney, or on demand anywhere in Australia from the 28th of February. Go to queerscreen.com.au for info, and I'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you. That's Suzy Wrong.